Okay, so I want to talk to you today about something that I've been struggling with. My job at the end of the day is to make sure people's finances are set up right. But there's no point in having loads of money if you don't enjoy it. After all, every second we spend is time we won't get back. And no one knows how long we have left. So how do you get that balance right? I mean, living for now, but saving for tomorrow. And come on, who wants to live like this?
Have a bit, bean off.
But I do think there are 4 wealth-destroying habits that I had no idea about until I started working in financial planning. And if you can be conscious of them, you've got a much better chance of getting to the finish line. Whatever the finish line means to you. There are also some decent kind of rule of thumb techniques that you can use alongside, with a heavy pinch of realism to figure out if you're on track. And I'm going to be telling you about this before the end of this video. Alright, so the first one is what's called lifestyle creep. We've all been there, myself included. You get a promotion at work, perhaps a bit more money. And what do? You treat yourself. But not just once. We do it a few times. And then a few more. And then we sort of get used to these things. And then our quality of life adapts to it. And it becomes, don't say it, the new normal. Deliveries 3 times a week, loving life. I've done this myself. I had a time in my life where I had nothing. And it feels like, it's cold in here. But actually, I'm just going to live in it. To actually going nice places and enjoying the money you work for. And I try and think which is the better option. And it's clearly the latter. Because it's only human to want more. But we need to know where to draw the damn line. So there's no good me just throwing around random bits of abstract advice. Let's be practical on how you can get around this. Instead of trying to stop lifestyle creep happening, what we need to do is we need to automate our savings to counteract it. So let's say you get, £1,000 per month promotion. And the typical thing we do is we think, free money. And then we go and buy all the kind of stuff we want. So the first thing to do in that situation is be conscious of it and automate a level of saving or investing, probably an amount that will feel uncomfortable. But once it happens, you'll forget about it. It'll just become a thing you do. And let the hassle of changing it work in your favour. Alright, the second one is define what you want, aka have a plan. The old adage is if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And this is equally true of your personal finances as it is for any other area in life. And I see this all the time from prospective clients or people I know. It's so easy to get caught up in all the noise and nonsense that the media put out about the next thing. And a lot of this, by the way, we financial professionals have to take some responsibility for. A lot of times these industries are funded about who the next fund manager is or why this particular investment or fund or whatever has a secret. But what people miss is, what would more mean to you? And I just want you to take a second to think about that. We're often fed this idea that 6.5% return is demonstrably better than 5.7. But ask yourself the question, how would your life be better if you had a bit more money? What would actually change? And this can often be why saving's hard as well. Often people just move from crisis to crisis and get obsessed about why oil prices are going to impact their portfolio. And I'm not trying to underplay the very serious issues around the cost of living crisis. I'm just saying that as part of managing your finances, especially when you get investments, it's about being able to avoid the noise. So the thing I would suggest to try and counteract this is define what good looks like to you and what time horizon you're wanting this all to play out. And let your investments be fuel to your financial plan. So don't let the things that you can't control define it for you. And here's a great story on how chasing money and its impact on life. Have a listen. So an American businessman was standing on the pier of a small coastal Mexican village where a small boat with just one fisherman docked inside. And inside this boat there were several large yellowfin tuna. And he said, how long did it take you to catch them? And the Mexican returned, only a little while. And the Mexican said, well, look, I've got enough to support my family's immediate needs. And the American thought about this and thought, what do you do with the rest of your time? And the fisherman said, well, I sleep late, I fish a little, I play with my children, take a siesta with my wife, and stroll into the village each evening where, I sip wine and play guitar with my friends. I've got a full and busy life. And the American hearing this scoffed and said, look, I'm a Harvard MBA. I could help you. You should spend more time fishing. With those proceeds, you could buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. And eventually you would have a fleet of fishing boats. And look, instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you could sell directly to the consumer and eventually open your own can factory. You could control the product and distribution. You need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City and LA and maybe even New York, where you can run your expanding enterprise. And the Mexican asked, well, how long will this take? And the American said, well, 15 to 20 years. And the fisherman said, well, okay, well then what? And the American laughed and said, look, this is the best part. When the time's right, you could announce an IPO and sell your company and become very rich. You'd make millions. And then you'd retire. You'd move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife, and stroll in the village where you could sip wine and play your guitar with your friends. Okay, so the next one is probably the keeping you poor, but maybe not right now, is that we have to protect ourselves against nasty surprises. And think about this, you've set up everything right. Let's imagine your finances are all ticking along, but you don't actually have financial security yourself to properly invest, such as an emergency fund. The reason I think this is so important is that we all say we are going to be rational, but that is always coming from a position when we make the investment. And the fact that we are making the investment probably means we feel quite secure because we're happy to invest. We're feeling positive about the world or the future. So I'm going to give you two me's who both want to start in the same headspace right now of I want to invest. Now, rational George has an emergency fund. Now let's say he needs to spend a couple of extra £1,000 on a car. That's okay. I'll just dip into my emergency fund. Now, bad George doesn't have that, and because of that, he gets lost in the spiral of doom. And then what happens in the spiral of doom is like this. Now, oh no, my investments have gone down, but I need to fix my car, and it's way more expensive than I thought it was going to be. And what happens if I lose my job? And maybe I should just cash out on my investments because I don't really feel that confident. And it's the fact that you didn't create that security meant that you've not created the environment to make you feel like you were secure, and that could lead to bad decisions. And there's also a huge mistake most people seem to make on their financial plan, and it's not protecting against disaster. And I highlighted it in this video, which you should watch if you haven't watched it, because it could save you a fortune. Because at the end of the day, it is castles made of sand if you don't secure your financial position properly. It might not be as sexy as the investment stuff, but it is hugely important. All right, and the final one is the many faces of market timing. And this is the big one, and it's just not understanding that with your investments, whether it is deciding to move in and out, whether it's deciding to change your positioning, often people just lose a lot in trying to guess where the market is going next. The truth is nobody knows. There can be some very decent predictions, a lot of them can be very rational, but no one truly knows. And it tends to be just a case where it goes, oh, well, the market's a bit heated right now, I'll just adjust some things, sell some stuff, and look to buy in later. But the problem with doing this is that you either get it wrong and you have to buy in for higher, or you get it right and you think, oh, where did I get these magical powers from? But probably you'll be thinking, well, I'm actually not that confident to buy back in. You've got to make two decisions. You've got to know when to get out and when to get back in. And there are so many versions of market timing that we might not be aware of. Drip feeding technically is a version of market timing. Moving out of risk assets into defensive assets. I think probably to hit the nail on the head is a guy called Terry Smith who said this quote: when it comes to so-called market timing, there are only two sorts of people: those who can't do it and those who know they can't do it. It's safer and more profitable to be in the latter camp. And just remember, just because I tell you these things doesn't mean that I haven't made all these mistakes myself. So there you go, 4 of the biggest mistakes that I see that will stop people becoming wealthy. Thanks very much for watching.